On the morning of August 14, 2005, something strange loomed in the skies above Athens. Roughly 10 kilometers above the city, a passenger jet was silently circling, completely unresponsive to air traffic control. For over 2 hours, there had been no communication from the cockpit. Fearing a possible terrorist threat, the Greek military scrambled fighter jets to intercept the aircraft. But what the military pilots saw only deepened the mystery. Inside the cockpit, there was no sign of the pilots, only a lone individual, who was clearly not part of the flight crew, moving near the controls. The rest of the cabin appeared eerily still. Suddenly, the aircraft banked and began a slow descent toward the ground. Moments later, it slammed into the hills just north of Athens, killing all 121 people on board. What caused this chilling sequence of events? And more importantly, could something like this happen again? In the early hours of August 14, 2005, Helios Airways Flight 522 prepared for departure from Larnaca International Airport in Cyprus. On board were 115 passengers and 6 crew members. Their final destination was Prague in the Czech Republic, with a scheduled stopover in Athens, Greece. It was peak summer travel season in Europe, and the majority of passengers were vacationers from Cyprus who planned to disembark in Athens. The flight crew seemed, on paper, highly experienced. The captain, a 59-year-old aviation veteran, had logged nearly 17,000 flight hours. His first officer, aged 51, had over 7,500 flying hours. In most aviation incidents, emphasis is placed on the competence of the crew, often to highlight how even seasoned pilots can fall victim to unforeseen failures. But in this case, there were deeper issues beneath the surface. These two pilots had flown together several times before, and tensions between them had been noted. The first officer had privately expressed concerns to friends and family about the captain's overbearing and authoritarian demeanor. The airline itself had reportedly been made aware of this strained dynamic. Further complicating matters, the first officer's training record raised red flags. Multiple instructors had reported concerns about his ability to properly follow checklists and standard procedures, issues that would prove critical in the hours ahead. The aircraft assigned for Flight 522 was a 7-year-old Boeing 737-300, a popular and widely trusted workhorse in commercial aviation, known for its reliability and cost efficiency. At takeoff, everything appeared normal. The plane ascended into the clear morning skies above the Mediterranean. As it passed through 10,000 feet, the crew contacted Nicosia Air Traffic Control. The captain requested a cruising altitude of 34,000 feet, which was promptly approved. The aircraft continued its smooth climb until it didn't. As Helios Flight 522 passed 12,000 feet, a warning alarm blared in the cockpit, normally triggered on the ground if the aircraft wasn't ready for takeoff. The crew was confused. 90 seconds later, the captain radioed Helios operations, reporting the takeoff configuration warning and noting the ventilation cooling fan lights were off. He asked about the circuit breakers. The ground engineer, who had worked on the aircraft earlier, said the breakers were behind the captain's seat and the fan lights off were normal, but the captain disagreed. That same engineer had recently run a test on the aircraft's pressurization system, which was located near the components the captain was referencing. A troubling thought crossed his mind. He asked the captain to confirm that the cabin pressurization mode selector was set to auto, its normal operating position. Instead of answering, the captain once again asked where the equipment cooling circuit breakers were. The engineer repeated that they were behind the captain's seat. But by that time, the situation had already taken a dire turn. In the passenger cabin, oxygen masks had deployed, an unmistakable sign that the cabin had lost pressure. Shortly after that, Helios ground operations attempted to call the aircraft again, but there was no response. Meanwhile, the aircraft leveled off at its cruising altitude of 34,000 feet. Despite numerous attempts by Helios operations and Nicosia Air Traffic Control to re-establish contact, the cockpit remained silent. ATC then asked another nearby aircraft to try contacting Flight 522, but they too received no reply. As the plane crossed into Greek airspace, it failed to check in with Athens air traffic control, another red flag. Still holding out hope, Nicosia controllers attempted to reach the crew on emergency frequencies but got nothing. They then called Athens Center to ask, "Did Helios contact you?" Athens replied, "Not yet." Suspecting a radio communication failure, Athens ATC issued the aircraft a descent clearance, but the plane didn't respond and, more alarmingly, made no move to descend. Over the next few minutes, more than 20 further attempts were made to contact the crew via radio and through nearby aircraft, all of which failed. At 7:15 a.m., Athens ATC alerted the Hellenic Air Force. 2 F-16 fighter jets were scrambled to intercept the unresponsive aircraft. By this point, the Boeing 737 had continued flying on autopilot along its programmed route, reaching Athens and even entering the holding pattern at Kievor, still at 34,000 feet. During the aircraft's sixth loop in the holding pattern around 8:30 in the morning, 2 F-16 fighter jets intercepted the unresponsive plane. One of the fighter pilots radioed back a chilling report. The captain's seat was empty, and in the first officer's seat sat a figure slumped forward over the controls. In the passenger cabin, the scene was equally haunting. Dozens of passengers sat motionless, oxygen masks still hanging from their faces. The interior of the plane was dark, but with the daylight streaming through the windows, the pilots could clearly make out the ghostly outlines of the oxygen hoses and masks. As the aircraft entered its 10th circuit of the holding pattern, a glimmer of activity caught the attention of the F-16 pilots. A person wearing a light blue shirt and a dark vest appeared in the cockpit and took the captain's seat. He placed a headset over his ears and reached for the control panel in front of him. Seconds later, the left engine flamed out. The aircraft immediately banked sharply to the left and began a slow, steady descent. The fighter pilot tried desperately to get the person's attention, maneuvering alongside and gesturing from the cockpit, but received no response. The F-16's pilot continued to follow as the 737 descended in a wide, circling left-hand turn. When the aircraft reached around 7,000 feet, the person in the cockpit finally acknowledged the fighters making a hand signal in response. The F-16's pilot responded with a gesture, motioning the aircraft to follow him toward the airport. The individual in the captain's seat pointed downward, indicating a descent, but didn't follow the jet. Then, just before 9 a.m., the aircraft veered even further left, now heading southwest. The right engine flamed out, and with both engines now lost, the aircraft began a rapid and uncontrolled descent. Roughly 4 minutes later, the plane crashed into the hills northwest of Athens. The impact destroyed the aircraft, killing all 121 people on board, 115 passengers, and 6 crew members. You thought that was shocking? Wait till you hear about the plane where the landing gear never came down, the engines were failing, and the runway was running out. Click on the video on your screen now.